some extra activity going there for a while. People's microphone's still on. Anyway, Hannah, we can flip back on again. All right, kia ora tātou everyone, and look, welcome back to our council meeting for Wednesday the 6th of April 2022. Moving through the report, the agenda items, now up to report number 11. And what we're going to do today, we may push a couple of things, or one thing anyway for certain, number 13 in our agenda around policy, appointments policy around directors and trustees is not time specific, so that will get moved to the May meeting just to give us a bit of wriggle room at the end of the day. We've still got 23 items to get through. Right, we'll come back to number 11, and it's around shareholding in Food HQ Innovation Limited. There's a memo there on page 131 of your papers, and was to be presented by Steve Patterson, but I think Cheryl Bryant will speak to it. Cheryl.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tēnā koutou, Cheryl Bryant, Assistant Chief Executive, and I'm presenting this report on behalf of Steve Patterson, who can't be here today. Just by way of background, the council was an initial partner in Food HQ along with MDC, with both mayors sitting on the board in the early years of its establishment. More recently, Heather Shotter, as Chief Executive, was appointed to the Food HQ board. The rationale for the current representation resulted from the city's strategic positioning as a food innovation hub and consequent rebranding. While our contribution doesn't lie in the science of food innovation, it has a leadership role in enhancing the city's reputation nationally and internationally in this area of strength. Consequently, this recommendation is brought to council to become a shareholder of Food Innovation Limited and to appoint a director to that company. I'm happy to take any questions on this. If I can't answer them, I do have some colleagues who can support me. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. I'll go to Karen. Sorry, Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Just a question. You mentioned that both mayors used to sit on the board. The third recommendation is that the Chief Executive be appointed to the board. And I'm just wondering what the thinking is, that should be an officer rather than a elected member or the mayor.
So in the recent appointment, it was the desire was not to have a political appointment. Ideally, the appointment to the company should be based on skills and experience that's sought by the company. At this stage, it's so early in its formation that we don't have a clear idea of that. So it's suggested that we have the Chief Executive as an interim appointment till that can be determined.
Okay, and just one further question. If that's to proceed, what would be the feedback loop to elected members about progress?
I think at this stage that's yet to be determined, but I think that raises a valid point there, Councillor Naylor, and we'll need to actually think about that and come back to you on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Cheryl. Just a very quick question. I just really want some reassurance around the risk profile, particularly if this entity perhaps, got into borrowings and things like that. So I just really want some reassurance around that, please.
I'll probably ask Desiree if she has a comment, but what I can comment on is perhaps any sort of financial sort of expectations around this this company, and I have spoken to Abby Thompson, the Chief Executive of Food HQ this morning. At this stage, there's no additional financial expectations based on Food HQ's current role and the work that it does. It should be noted, though, that a food strategy is under development, and if out of that work there were recommendations to expand the role of Food HQ, then PNCC would need to consider whether there was continuing value in any consequential increased financial contributions, but there's no barriers in terms of PNCC PNCC giving up their shares. I'll just ask if Desiree has anything to add to that.
No, nothing from me, Cheryl.
Yeah, sorry. So if this company actually raised additional funding for whatever venture it might actually want to follow, I just want some reassurance, really, that given the construct of the company, we're actually at no additional risk to what we are at the present time.
My understanding is that the arrangement is very similar to to how it was before, with all of the involvement and the financial contribution from all of the parties. So from our perspective, we will be limited to a 20% shareholding, and I don't think that there are any guarantees being requested from council.
Yeah, thank you. Back to you, Ms. Mayor.
All right. Any other questions of Cheryl? I don't think there is. Okay. All right. Sorry, there is. Susan. Sorry, Councillor.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I thought there was somebody else waiting. Just to follow on around the financials, if you go to 6.3 of the agreement, it's got the board shall set financial contributions to be payable by each and every shareholder in equal amounts for each financial year. So going back to what was previously asked, if the board decides to set $100,000 per shareholder and it's voted on the board, then is the council liable to pay that contribution?
Well, in talking, thank you, Councillor Beattie, in talking to the Chief Executive this morning, there is no additional financial expectations. I'll ask Mr. Murphy to talk about what our current financial contribution is. So there is no intention to increase that amount if the work and the role of the board remains the same. As I said, the unknown factor is what comes out of the food strategy in terms of any recommendations of any expanded role for Food HQ. But at that time, council would need to consider whether there was value in retaining its shares or whether it wanted to actually give those shares up. David, do you want to comment on our current contribution?
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, our current contribution is $40,000 per annum. CEDA also put in $20,000 and MDC contribute $5,000.
Okay. Thank you, David, and thank you, Cheryl.
Okay. Any further questions? No. All right. Thank you, Cheryl. Look, we have the three recommendations there. That the council make an application to be a shareholder of Food HQ as the memorandum of understanding attached to the report. That the Chief Executive be authorised to take steps necessary to facilitate this signing the appropriate documentation, and that the Chief Executive be appointed as an interim basis for a period of 12 months as the council's nominated director for Food HQ Innovation Limited, with the position to be reviewed prior to the expiration of that period. So look, I'm happy to move that. If I could have a seconder for that. Somebody put their hand up, I can see. Okay, thank you, Councillor Bowen. Sorry, I couldn't see everybody. And look, I'll just make some general comments. Councillors, I think it's really important that we do back this. This is some of our major partners in not only the food and the CRIs sector, but also Massey University. We have been in this sector or playing in this sector for decades, and it really is our opportunity now with the new food strategy to take it perhaps to another level. But we can't even get to that space if we aren't truly in Food HQ. So I want to acknowledge Plant and Food New Zealand for taking a step forward and forming this organisation properly. It had been a somewhat more casual sort of arrangement, but this formalises it better now. I understand some members being a little bit unsure of what we're actually signing up to. But as the legal counsel said, it really is no different to what we were before. It's just more formalised, and I think that is much better. It should report, I think, to us, and I would ensure that it probably comes to either council or to finance in the same way that the airport company does, or CEDA, or the factory, either on an annual basis or there, or further. I think there's only good to come out of this, and I think the chief executive, although the mayor's role was a board member previously, there was too many board members, and I actually, along with Margaret Cavalis, the then mayor of Manawatu, gave up our positions and suggested to the rest of the board that they put a more skills-based group together, and that has been working pretty well to date. I think us having a place at that board just keeps us really connected, and I think the chief executive at this stage is the best person for that role. So I hope that you would support it. I'll open it up for any other comments. Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to understand that if it's just for a 1 year, sorry, it's coming back into a bit more thought for questions, whether or not our acting CE would remain in the role, considering that he's going to potentially be in that role for a period of 6, to see that term through, rather than having it appointed as the new CE coming in and not having some continuity. I'm just thinking in the state of where we're at for recruitment. Just it's probably another deep thought.
It's a good point, and I actually did think of that myself, actually, when I saw the recommendation. So I might just default, I've just got one of the officers wanting to speak. Cheryl.
Yeah, I think the intention was, by using the term chief executive, that would be the acting chief executive until such time a chief executive was appointed and on board. So if you prefer to have something a bit tighter around that, you could be acting chief executive until such time the chief executive is appointed, and then actually it would default to the chief executive if you wanted to tidy that up. But the intention was that it would actually be the acting chief executive and then fall to the new chief executive.
I guess, and I understand that that's their delegation, but I'm wondering whether, for the benefit of having somebody appointed for a whole year rather than having 2 part terms, I'm just thinking if we want to give this organisation some momentum. So I just would weigh up whether we just would appoint the acting CE for that whole year.
Yeah,
I know it's splitting hairs, but I think it's a key point for continuity.
Yes, I'm hearing you, Councillor, and I have a tendency to agree. I think where the officer was really just looking at the wording of it, what you were alluding to was getting some continuity for full 12 months rather than two different people coming in over 12 months, which would create some upheaval, even further upheaval than what there is now. I'm wondering if we can change that last recommendation, that the acting chief executive be appointed on an interim basis.
If I could just also follow through, because to be fair on our new CE that will come in through recruitment would be enough things just organisationally to keep a focus on, rather than having just another directorship to keep a focus on. And with respect, Chris, as our acting CE, has got that knowledge base to maybe continue on and have that influence to report back to the CE where needed, and I think his skills and expertise and experience can offer continuity for a 1 year appointment and just not have it in that frame.
Yeah, I'll just go to Cheryl before I go to the other councillors. Cheryl.
If that's your intention, you might want to be specific in the recommendation around the appointment of Chris Dyberg, and as acting chief executive, then chief infrastructure officer, because after 6 months, or whenever the new person starts, then he will no longer be acting chief executive, and that tidies everything up for you.
I think we could just name him, couldn't we, rather than titles?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go to other councillors, get their views. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it was exactly that. The discussion has moved on in the chat, and we've come to the same conclusion that it was more straightforward to just name Chris, and I would support that as the seconder.
Okay. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify that in this instance, we can name, it's appropriate for us to name somebody as the representative, because we can't actually, as a council, appoint a staff member who's not the chief executive, because they're not our staff, and so we can't direct them in any way. So it's fine while we have Chris specifically in the acting role, but I don't know how appropriate it is to actually then go and name somebody rather than name the position, because really the only person we can appoint in that role is the chief executive or acting chief executive. Are we able to have a comment from staff around that process? Because it's a little, I mean, my view is that if that's the intention, we can just make that clear, and I'm sure that would probably be respected, but I'm just saying in terms of process, I don't know that this is appropriate.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I dare say one of the things that could make that clear is that you appoint the acting chief executive with the intention of the appointment to the board continuing for the full year. Would that assist?
Yep. Yeah. I think we all want to get to the same place. Some just want to take a different road, but yeah, I think we all want to go to the same place. I'll just go to somebody's popped out. Okay, I forgot who it was. Okay, so we would say that the acting chief executive be appointed for the full 12-month period. Is that what we're saying? Okay. If we could we bring that up on screen, please, again? Thank you, Natalia. If we could just say that the acting chief executive be appointed on an interim basis for 12 months. Thank you. That's great. All right. And that was moved by myself and
I'm happy to second, Mr. Mayor, if you're looking for a seconder, but I thought Councillor Bowen mentioned she had second.
Yep, and Councillor Bowen. Okay. All right. Thank you for teasing that out. I'm sorry, councillors, we went a long way around, but I think we've got to the right place. So we have those three recommendations. I'll open it up for any final comments. There being none, we'll do this with a show of hands. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Right. We'll move to trustee for Acacia Birch Trust Board, and there's a memo there from our governance manager Hannah White on page 183. Hannah, take it as read.
Yes, happy to take it as read, Mr. Mayor. Needless to say, we're in a position we wouldn't want to be in, and this is the practical solution just to get through this short period of time. Also to note that on page 184 of your papers, there's a small mistake. It would come back to the May council meeting, of course, this being April itself. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And there is some urgency on this, so I don't think we need to debate it too much. It's around the recommendations are that council resolves to appoint another councillor onto the Acacia Birch Trust Board for a term ending 1 August 2022. That those expressions of interest from councillors interested in being appointed to the trust board be sought, recommended, and brought to the council on the 4th of May. All right, I'll open it up for any questions. First of all, I'm quite happy, or is there any questions first to officers? Councillor Dennison.
Sorry, there.
No, I couldn't hear you there, Vaughan, but obviously that was just the last one.
Yeah, sorry, it was tardy. I didn't put my hand down before. It was the previous item.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen.
Just signalling I was willing to move or second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right. Well, you can move it. I can second it, and that's done. Any further comments? There being none, we'll do it with a show of hands. All those in favour? And that's passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay. We move now. Number 13, we've pushed to May, so we won't go into that. Number 14 is around an exemption for the region's disaster relief fund from being a CCO or a council-controlled organisation. There's a memo again from our governance manager Hannah on page 219, and I'll ask you to speak to that, Hannah.
Just prior to that, Mr. Mayor, I'll just redeclaring my conflict in this item and won't contribute. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Dennison. This is an administrative matter before you, members. Just to note that Horizons did pass this themselves a few days prior to us, and that they sought legal advice on our behalf, on behalf of all of the organisations involved in this particular organisation, to ensure that although we're late in the process, that there are no matters that we need to be concerned about.
Okay. All right. I'll take it as being read. Any other questions of Hannah? There being none, all right, we've got the recommendation that the Manawatu Wanganui Disaster Relief Fund is exempt from being a council-controlled organisation for a further 3 years. I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor. My hand was up. I was prepared to move or second, so that was me. Thank you.
Good. All right. I think this is just very simple administrative, so we won't need to go into too much debate. There being no further comments, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, hand up. Against? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Right, we'll now bring in the late item. And that was, I have to just get that, sorry. I've got it on a different file. And this was around council chamber and vaccine pass requirements. And there's a late paper, and it was from Hannah, our governance manager. Hannah, do you want to speak to this?
I would like to just very quickly, please, Mr. Mayor. The paper itself I'm happy to take as read and answer any questions, but members, I just need to bring your attention to a few processes we need to sign off first. You will be aware that we've followed the Local Government Act earlier in the meeting when we accepted the late paper, but we also have an extra standing order that governs this process as well, and so we would need to suspend this if you are comfortable taking this. So that particular standing order is 2.24.4 for those of you that have your standing orders in front of you. Those of you that don't, I will read it to you. Council may, on a recommendation contained in a report, revoke or alter all or part of resolutions previously passed at meetings. So you'll be aware that that is what we're talking about right now, and that the standing order would require at least 2 working days notice of the proposal to the members before the proposal be considered. So I need you to consider first whether you're comfortable dealing with this matter today or whether you are not.
Okay, so we, in short, after all that process, we have to revoke.
Suspend the standing order just for now, please.
All right. I'm happy to move that. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Naylor. Is there anybody wishing to comment further on this? We can get a discussion going on it. Okay, I haven't. So that's been, the first part of that's been moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Naylor. So I'll just simply put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous, thank you. All right, we then go to the second part. So now, Hannah, you may wish to speak to the paper.
I'm happy to take take it as read from members and to answer any questions.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just, because it's on a separate, but I'm just juggling everything. Okay, any questions of Hannah? Okay, there being none. All right, so we've got the recommendation in front of us, which is that the vaccine pass requirement for access to the council chamber be removed. So following our facilities, where it's happened, I'm quite happy to move that. Can I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Hancock. All right, I'll open it up for any comments. There being none, look, councillors, I just think we're following. Oh, sorry, Councillor Johnson.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor, I was a bit slow to click the reaction button. No, I was just going to say that given that all of the other council facilities are following the government guidelines and dropping vaccine pass policy, I don't see why entry to the chamber should be any different. And so I'm happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor. That was exactly what I was going to say, was around being consistent with our other facilities. So it would be somewhat strange not to let the the debating chamber not be open as well. So I think this is sensible. So if there's no further comments, I think we'll just take a simple vote on this. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, we'll go now to our work schedule on page 223, and I'll open it up for any matters arising from that. Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to see, am I right in understanding the residence card is now going to be needing to set a new date, and just, is that still important to follow through, and when that might be?
It's down for June 2022. It's moved around a bit, but it should be put to bed regardless of whether we adopt something. Remembering we do a lot more council marketing now, and perhaps I'll get Cheryl to speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We haven't really given any attention to this, given the other priorities we've had in front of us, and the obvious restraints around the pandemic. We will need to turn our attention to this, Councillor Dennison. Not sure if that date is reachable or not, but I'll commit to look at it over the next couple of weeks with staff to see if we can give you any more assurance.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good. Just on that subject, Cheryl, there was quite a lot of work that Destination Manawatu did with a residence card just before it got merged into CEDA, so it may be worth going into the depths of CEDA to see if anything exists there, because there was some good work and about 1,500 people had subscribed to it, so it was worth, I think, following through with.
Thank you.
Okay, look, I'm quite happy to move that. If I could have a seconder. Work schedule. Thank you, Councillor Naylor. I'll open it up for any other comments. There being none, we'll vote on this. Thank you. And I'll just get the screen back up again. I'll do it with a show of hands. All those in favour? Against? That's unanimous. Thank you. Right. We now go to the recommendations from various committee meetings. And The first one there is number 16, which is presentation of part 1, Community Development Committee meeting from the 9th of March, and I'll go to the Chair, Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that the Part 1 Public Community Development Committee recommendations from the 9th of March 2022 be adopted.
Thank you. And the seconder, Councillor Bowen, thank you. Any matters arising from that? Okay, we've got a couple. Councillor Dennison.
My apologies. I'll bring my hand down. That was a previous item.
Thank you. Repeat offender there. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Look, I wouldn't normally repeat something at council, but I am going to be voting against this, but I just wanted to be clear that my reason for voting against it is not that I don't support the progression of a feasibility study for a night shelter. It's simply because I had a different view about how that should be funded, and the option was available for that to be done within existing resources. So I just wanted to clarify that, and so that it wouldn't be understood by anyone that I'm not opposed to progressing the feasibility study. It was simply about how that would be enabled.
Councillor Finlay.
I've actually spoken to one or two people about this since it first come up. Just a matter of interest, have we at any stage spoken to the local city mission and see if they would like to be involved with it, or see what sort of interest they have in it?
Council, I think that's probably a point for it's a good question, and I'm sure the staff can respond to that maybe offline, because I'm sure there's a lot that they need to speak to, but I'm just unsure whether that's quite the right time to do it now. It's just really around the any matters arising from those recommendations from that community development meeting. But I'll ask the staff maybe to respond to you on that. Okay, any other matters arising from that? There being none, we'll put this to the vote. So again, I'll do by show of hand. All those in favour? Against? Okay, that's if we could just note that, please, administration there. Thank you. That's right. Now we go to number 17, and that's around presentation of the Planning and Strategy Committee recommendations from its 9th March meeting, and I'll go to the Chair, the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would be delighted to present the Part 1 Public Planning and Strategy Committee recommendations from the 9th of March 2022 meeting for adoption.
And we've got a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Hancock. If there's any matters arising, I've got one, which I just want to bring up. And in fact, it's a slight amendment to the funding and policy, and it's the addition of 2 words on 2 clauses around the major events and the sponsorship fund. And could I just get that up on screen, please? And this is around addition, but not the addition of the words "but not limited to" be added to the word 30,000 in section 7, clause 15 under the Major Events Fund, and the words "but not limited to" be added to the word 10,000 to section 7, clause 17 of the Sponsorship Fund. And the reasoning for that is it just gives the staff an opportunity to make some decisions without having to bring it back into the chamber. At present, we've probably got 4 to 5 of our events and sponsorship properties that would have to come back into the chamber on a regular basis. I can understand they want to draw a line in the sand somewhere around expectation levels, but reality is we fund a number of major events above this. So the staff supported this, and unfortunately I had Councillor Harpiter seconding this. She isn't online, so I'm just going to seek another, thank you Councillor Dennison, so I can get it discussed, otherwise it's a dead argument. I've probably got to open that up now. That's so Councillor Johnson.
It's just a question, Mr. Mayor. I don't have the policy in front of me. Are you able to read out the whole clause? Because just that small little piece doesn't make it clear to me what the impact of this is, or if you're able to get someone to put it up on screen.
Can somebody put it up on screen? It's literally the addition of those two words and those two clauses. I thought that was going to be done, but it wasn't. Can somebody do that, Hannah? Is that available somewhere? Sorry, you don't have it. Okay. Right. Try and find it online. Just bear with me while we try and find it.
Mr. Mayor, I think that Hannah was actually trying to source that. She said it'll just take a few moments.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to other questions then. Councillor Naylor.
Sorry, I was going to ask exactly the same thing as Councillor Johnson, so I'm just looking it up too. Are you able to just repeat where in the policy that is? Because
it's on the major events fund, and it's the clause around maximum values for applications, and it's also on the sponsorship fund, and again on the clause of values.
Mr. Mayor, I've got the major events fund up now. It's on, for those who don't have it, it's number 15 in the policy. It's on page 91 of the agenda of the planning and strategy meeting. And the phrase is, a fund will open at the start of the financial year and will remain open until it's fully allocated. A maximum of $30,000 per financial year is available per application. Assessment and allocation decisions will be made by staff. So is that where you want to put
yes.
a maximum of 30,000 but not limited to?
Yes.
So it's not a maximum then, is it?
No, it isn't. It isn't, because we currently are exceeding that now with 5 of our events. And it would enable the officers to make some of those decisions without having to come back to us every single time. Otherwise, they would be in the chamber just about every month.
Okay, and for sponsorship fund, it says a maximum of $10,000 is available per application. Otherwise, staff have the discretion to award up to 50% of total funding to an eligible proposal. So I'm not quite clear how. So basically, there are no limits then to either the sponsorship fund or the major events fund. That's what the effect of your proposal is.
No, not necessarily. It's just meaning that currently we have rural games. We have the Armageddon Festival at Arena. All of those exceed 30,000. The Gravel and Tar would be another one, and the Food Awards would be another. So all of those exceed the policy limits at the moment.
So would we be able to have a comment from the planning and policy staff around the proposed changes?
Yeah, I've been following the conversation. Julie's on. I think Julie's online as well. Sorry, David Murphy here, Chief Planning Officer. But I think your comments earlier, Councillor Johnson, I think, but not limited to, would effectively mean there's no maximum. I haven't had a chance to have another look at the words that were shared by the Mayor, but from what I can recall or what I saw of the resolution as it was flashed up, it would mean that there was no maximum.
Just for Mr. Murphy's benefit, his colleagues agreed with my recommendations when I put it to them. Otherwise, I wouldn't have wasted my time. So, if there's anybody else that I spoke to wants to speak up, that would be.
Was that the event? Was that the events team, Grant, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, it was, and the Assistant Chief Executive.
So I wasn't part of those conversations, but if Cheryl's online.
I'm online, Mr. Mayor, if you want to comment.
Well, some of the councillors were just seeking some understanding, some reassurance. That's all.
So the effect of this would give flexibility to staff when there are events or sponsorship opportunities outside the limitations. Probably an example for sponsorship would have been what we have done in terms of the food awards, which would have been outside those limits in terms of attracting the food awards to Palmerston North. Luke is online if you want any specifics in terms of the effect of this recommendation.
Yeah, so there's the food awards, as I said, some of those other events, and the way applications work, and remembering it is a competitive market, it does give the staff some sort of flexibility and some certainty too for what can be done without it having coming back into the chamber for every application. All right. I'll open it up. Councillor Naylor.
Yeah, hi. I probably just need to double check what your original wording was, because it currently says a maximum of, and I know you were adding but not limited to, but surely if you're wanting to not have that limit, you need to remove the words a maximum of, don't you? Is that part of your recommendation?
No. The officers have drawn a line in the sand to try and keep some sort of expectations, but there'll be the odd occasion where, for instance, we get the Rugby World Cup. We just would have to turn it away unless it came back into the chamber, because they would be seeking clearly more than 30. But there needs to be some sort of level of expectation. The same with the sponsorship fund. This just gives some flexibility.
Okay, I don't probably have it 100% clear, but at this point I won't be supporting that. I think from my perspective, if we've developed a policy with a maximum, I think if it does go over that, I'm quite comfortable for it to come back to the chamber. And sometimes I think there's an advantage for elected members to have some visibility over funding of events, particularly when that does exceed the normal limits. So I won't support this.
Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I've just got two questions, if that's okay. The first one is I can direct it to David, but I suspect it's for Julie. When the policy was developed, did we talk to the staff who administer the funds internally as a part of developing the wording and the kind of framework for the policy?
Julie McDonald, available here now, somewhat hurriedly. Yes, Councillor, we did. With all the administrative staff and specialist staff and all the areas involved with the funding have been involved in the development of this policy. If I could just turn your attention to 5.4.4 in the it's on page 75 of the agenda of the committee that you're looking at. It does describe how staff can refer such applications back to the Chamber for their decision making, should that be required. And I would note that major applications seeking, for example, $30,000, they're not for events that are happening next week. So there's usually you would hope, a long planning time.
Thank you. And then my next question is probably for you, Cheryl, or possibly someone in your team. And in terms of that process, Julie's obviously just outlined that there, within the policy, there's that mechanism to refer things to the Chamber. So that's within the policy that is in front of us. But I wondered how it happens in current practice, or how you see that happening, because I guess how the Mayor's said that, if we don't remove the limit, then we're turning people away, or, we're removing accessibility to the fund. And so I'm wondering, what does that actually look like if we're contacted by somebody, say the Food Awards, and there isn't budget for it and it's an opportunity? Is there a process to automatically refer that to elected members, or what currently happens if we were to receive something outside of a scope?
I'll ask, thank you, Deputy Mayor Rutherford. I will ask Luke to weigh in here, because he's managed both funds in the past. But I would imagine if there was an opportunity that was outside the fund, we would actually come to council. But Luke might want to talk about how it's actually operated in the past.
Yeah, happy to. In the past, we had some recommendations come through from the grants and event funding review that our internal business assurance team worked through. One of those was that we developed a change control framework. So part of that framework was when we assessed applications that sat outside the parameters, we would escalate that up through the ELT based on the new policy that has been adopted. We will be putting those back through the Chamber.
Okay, so there's currently essentially a political assessment of applications if they're not able to be met within current funds.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask, just confirm with Luke or one of the officers the value of Food Awards, Rural Games, Gravel and Tar and Armageddon, if that's known off? Just how far they exceed the 30,000 limit? Can I just understand the value of our contribution? And I also think it's Teams Champs too, is it? Is it the other event?
No, through the Major Events Fund and the Sponsorship Fund at the moment, there are only two. They are Rural Games and Food Awards. Rural Games, in essence, gets a double hit of that fund through the assessment of their economic impact, and the Food Awards predated the policy, so that the restrictions on that weren't in place when that was awarded.
And what's the value of the Food Awards then? Is it?
It was. I don't have that figure exactly in front of me. I'd have to come back to you. But okay. It's definitely over that the new limit.
Okay. Can then, as a follow through, would it be a possibility to just increase the limit and capture our recommendation within it, rather than having those additional words added? Would that make it too high? Is that the policy, this view of the figure being too high?
It does place limitations on the current officers who are assessing it around financial delegations, but it could go through ELT basically.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy as it stands.
Councillor Dingwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My questions are sort of similar to Councillor Dennison's questions. If the staff felt that the limit is too low, what would be the process for them to raise that and bring that, you know, to councillors to, I don't know, look at increasing that maximum amount?
Can I provide an answer to that, please, Julie McDonald? I'm not exactly sure of the intention of your question, Councillor Dingwall, but I guess this has been a policy that's been publicly consulted. So while staff views have been taken into account in the drafting of it, that councillors signed off on to consult, it's not really a matter for staff to determine these amounts. This is an elected member decision as to the level of funding that you're comfortable having delegated to officers and the point at which you consider that a decision should be brought through the chamber. So we've settled at in terms of the advice for these funds is what was drafted and what the committee has recommended. If you choose to make that higher, then that's entirely up to you.
I guess where I'm trying to go with that is looking at the potential of I suppose raising it rather than removing the idea of not having a maximum at all. That's the bit that's concerning me quite a bit, and I'm not sure. I hear what. Okay, that might just be a comment. I think I'll leave it at that, and we'll see what happens.
We are in comments, Councillor.
Well, okay. Well, I guess for me, I'm concerned with the recommendation as it stands because I don't like the idea of just removing the limits. If it's a case that, you know, a lot of the funds that they're looking at doesn't actually fit under those limits, then possibly we should look at increasing those limits. But I'm really hesitant to try and do that on the fly in this meeting. And I think if we just look at taking away the maximum, that opens us up to a whole bunch of other risks as well. So at this point, I'm uncomfortable making any changes in that direction. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I suppose I'm just really trying to pick up on sort of the general mood of the elected members here. But I suppose the words, but not limited to, provides us, I guess, with a little bit of uncertainty about what the ceiling might look like. So I just wonder if we could actually get an officer's comment around how we can safeguard that. I know what you're trying to do, by the way.
It's David Murphy again, Chief Planning Officer. Look, I think from a policy, I mean, this is one of the challenges with policies. Once you write a number, that's the number. So, and if you say not limited to, there is no number. So it seems to me the options are that officers report back on a case-by-case basis if an event's seeking over $30,000, or as Julie said, if you feel that $30,000 is too tight, that you increase that. But if you go with not limited to, then I guess it's an element of how much. As I said, there would be no ceiling, and it would be at the discretion of officers and ELT as to what's allocated.
Yeah, so there is some discretion in terms of if we got an application which was for more than, say, for example, the $30,000, we can actually deal with that within the current framework.
So the way, as Julie said, the way the policy is framed at the moment is if there was an application that exceeded $30,000, we could report that to committee. If it's under $30,000, it can be assessed and approved. But if you went to not limited to, then it would be at the complete discretion of officers as to whether or not any funding was approved over and above $30,000 and how much that was.
Okay, thank you, David. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Naylor, you're still sitting there. Are you wishing to comment, or is that?
Sorry, I've already commented. I just forgot to.
Okay. All right. Just on the right of reply there, councillors. Look, just, you know, myself and other councillors have had a little bit of experience in events. I previously voted against this in the policy consultation document because I felt it was too low, and I've just borne out the reasons why. Previously, there was no limit to it, but I understand that the majority view was that people wanted a line in the sand. My reason for this was to ensure that we just didn't get stuff coming back into the chamber on a regular basis, and you know, that may happen. There is that safeguard, but having the words "not limited to" just gave the staff, who we should be trusting in their area of expertise, to be able to make a pragmatic and sensible decision. So that's what I was alluding to. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. So we'll do it with a show of hands. All those in favour of the, sorry, we'll do the recommendation first. Sorry, the amendment first. That's right, Hannah, we should be doing the amendment first.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, cool. All right. Sorry, Brent, you've just stuck your hand up.
Yeah, could I call for division, please?
Okay, yep, sure. Hannah, would you like to do this through division, please?
On the amendment before you, councillors, to add, subject to the words but not limited to, be added after the word $30,000 to Section 7, Clause 15, Major Events Fund of the Support and Funding Policy 2022, and that the words but not limited to be added after the word $10,000 to Section 7, Clause 17, Sponsorship Fund of the Support and Funding Policy 2022. So this is just the amendment that we're looking at. Councillor Dennison.
For.
Deputy Mayor Rutherford.
Against.
Councillor Petrinas. Are you online, Councillor Petrinas?
Yep. For.
Thank you. Councillor McKellard.
For.
Councillor Barrett.
Against.
Councillor Bowen.
Against.
Councillor Beattie.
Against.
Councillor Butt.
Against.
Councillor Finlay.
For.
Councillor Hancock.
Against.
Councillor Dingwall.
Against.
Councillor Johnson.
Against.
Councillor Meehan, are you online?
Yeah, for.
Mayor Smith.
For.
Councillor Naylor.
Against.
I have 6 for and 9 against, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that's failed. We'll now go to the substantive. And I believe that was moved by the
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, we can now move all of the recommendations.
Yeah, that's what I mean, the substantive. So if we can go to those, and that was from the Chair and Deputy Chair. So any further comments, matters arising to those? They can be taken down at some stage.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, just indicate.
Yeah, just a moment, Councillor. We're just trying to get the admin side sorted. So can we get that taken down, please? Okay, thank you. All right, are there any other matters arising from those planning minutes? And I'll go to you, Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just the day we had discussed the street racer issue, you were indicated you're going to be meeting with some of the racers that evening or the next night or something shortly after, and just wanted to know if there was any outcome from that or any feedback that you could offer.
Yep, if you've driven around, you would have seen that they've cleaned up the building. So we got them to repaint the building that day, that weekend, and they did a massive clean-up with a couple of skip bins, which I looked after and funded out of the Mayoral Fund. And they've generally, that group have generally been respective. They still skid round and do everything else, but it's been tidier than what it has been. In saying that, though, Works Road's still out of control, and that the issue has not gone away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that update, and that's positive all the same, and it's first engagement, and credit to you. Thank you.
Okay, any other matters arising? No, there isn't. Okay, we'll do this by a show of hands if that's okay. All those in favour? Against? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay. We'll now go to the recommendations from the Finance and Audit Committee from the 23rd of March, and I'll go to the Chair, Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendations from the Finance and Audit Committee meeting from the 23rd of March 2022 be adopted.
Thank you, and seconded by the Deputy Chair, Councillor Naylor. Matters arising. Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two things I just wanted to bring up. One is 26-22, which is the Calhoun proposal to grant a lease. Can I declare my interest in that being the patron for Manawatu softball? So I won't participate, have that separated, and I won't participate in that item. And secondly, can I request under the fees and charges review a separation of 22-22, both 1 and 2, which is the planning and miscellaneous, and 2 is the first recommendation in building. I'd like to vote against those. If I could have those two separated, please, from the whole. Thank you.
Okay. I'll just give the admin people a few moments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Dennison, could I just ask you to repeat which item was referenced to the softball?
Yes, it was 26-22. It's Calhoun Park proposal to grant a lease.
Thank you.
And I'll just ask you to put them up on screen when you've got them ready. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, is the mover and seconder comfortable to move all of those even as we take them separately?
And getting nods, yes.
Yes. Okay, then what we'll do is we'll take all of the, excuse me, my other phone's ringing, excuse me. We will take all of the group that's on the page before you first. So we've removed, Councillor Dennison, you'll notice clause 22-22, we've removed recommendations 1 and 2, so we can take those separately. And we've also removed 26-22, and we'll take that separately. But we'll take the larger group first, please.
Okay. All right. So I'll do that with a show of hands. So we'll do the first big tranche as one. So all those in favour? Against? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Right, we'll come to the next one, which is clause 26-22. around Calhoun Park and granting the lease. We'll vote just on that. So again, all those in favour? Against? Abstain? All right, that's passed. Thank you. And then the final one is clause 22 around fees and charges, recommendations 1 to 2. And again, we'll just vote on this. Again, we'll do it again. All those in favour? Against? Q. Note that Vaughan against, or Councillor Dennison. Right, it's carried. Right. And now we'll come to the number 19, which is our Environmental Sustainability Committee meeting of the 30th of March, and I'll go to the Chair, Councillor Barrett. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that Council adopts the recommendations of the Environmental Sustainability Committee, 30 March 2022.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Butt. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Are there any matters arising from that? Okay, there being none, we'll do it simply by vote. All those in favour? Against? That is carried, thank you. Okay, doing well, number 20. We now look to move to exclude the public. So if I could have that up, please, around excluding the public. The council resolves the public be excluded. I'll look to move that. If I could have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Dennison. And if there's no comments, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That's unanimous, thank you. All right, we'll just require the staff a couple of minutes to